Sierra Langley wasn't looking for ghosts. She was just a mechanic trying to breathe again, far from the roar of engines and the smell of burnt oil. But on that quiet afternoon, as the amber leaves of autumn danced across the northern Rockies, she found something that would change her forever. The road ahead was narrow and cracked, curling between trees that whispered secrets older than she could imagine. She didn't have a plan, just a pickup truck, a half-empty coffee, and a need to forget everything she'd left behind. Then out of nowhere she saw it, a dirt path half swallowed by pine needles, so easy to miss it almost didn't exist. But something deep inside her stirred, a pull she couldn't explain. Without thinking, Sierra turned the wheel. Tires crunched over gravel as she drove into a world the maps had forgotten. The sunlight thinned. The air grew colder. And at the end of that hidden path stood a cabin, small and silent, wrapped in vines that looked more like veins. The kind of place you don't find, unless it wants you to. The cabin leaned slightly to one side, its roof sagging like it was tired of holding back the years. Moss draped over the shingles like a shroud, and every window was fogged from the inside as if someone had just exhaled. Sierra stepped out of her truck, boots crunching against dead leaves, and felt a strange, quiet settle around her. The forest didn't move. No birds, no wind, just the sound of her heartbeat. She pushed open the rusted gate and followed the overgrown path to the porch. The wood groaned under her weight. The door hung crooked on its hinges, the handle cold and damp. Inside, it smelled of dust, rot, and something faintly metallic. Sunlight slanted through cracks in the roof, painting ghostly beams across a small table and an old writing desk. Something about that desk pulled her in. She opened the drawer and froze. Inside was a small, leather-bound diary, edges cracked, pages yellowed. The handwriting inside was tight and urgent. August 17th, 1993. The entries began normal notes about weather and wildlife, but then shifted. They brought another one last night. No name, only a number. Sierra's breath caught. Names, numbers, experiments, and then something lives in the woods. I think they made it. Sierra closed the diary, her fingers trembling. She looked around the cabin again, and everything she'd missed before now screamed at her. The claw marks on the door, the burn stains on the floor, the smell of iron. This wasn't just a cabin. It was a cage. She turned to leave, but a sound, soft, deliberate, came from behind her. She spun around, flashlight raised. Nothing, just the shifting shadows. Still, her instincts screamed, run. She shoved the diary into her backpack and stepped outside. The forest was no longer silent, it was listening. She drove fast, branches scraping against the truck like fingers trying to hold her back. She didn't stop until she reached a mountain overlook, her heart hammering in her chest. She pulled out the diary again, flipping through faster. The last pages were frantic. It screams like it remembers being human. No more food runs, it's out. Sierra's stomach turned. That wasn't paranoia, it was confession. And then she heard it, the snap of a branch behind her. She froze. The forest was holding its breath. Sierra jumped into her truck and slammed the door, starting the engine. In the mirror, a figure stood just beyond the tree line, still, watching, but when she looked again, it was gone. She drove until the trees blurred into streaks of black and green, and just as she thought she'd escaped, a small ranger station appeared ahead. She almost kept going, but curiosity won. Inside, everything was coated in dust except the floor. Fresh footprints. A map hung crooked on the wall with red circles drawn around different forest zones, one exactly where she'd found the cabin. Then she noticed something wedged under the desk. Another notebook, same handwriting. She opened it. "If you find this, don't trust the Rangers." Her stomach dropped, and that's when the radio crackled to life. A man's calm voice came through. Cabin 47 is compromised. The diary is gone, moving to secondary site. Sierra's pulse spiked. They knew. They knew someone had found it. She backed away from the desk, heart in her throat. This wasn't about ghosts. It was about people who were still watching. By the time Sierra reached the diner off the highway, her hands were shaking. She sat in the corner booth, ordered black coffee, and laid the diaries out in front of her. Every word, every page painted a picture she didn't want to believe. Experiments, missing people, something escaped. And the Rangers, were they protectors or participants? She traced her finger over the red circles she'd copied from the map. 3 locations, one of them near the southern ridge. Before she could think further, headlights flashed through the window. A white truck pulled into the lot. 2 men in SID. Inside, not eating, not talking, just watching. Sierra's breath hitched. She grabbed her bag, shoved the diaries inside, and slipped out the back door. The men didn't follow, but their eyes did. And that's when Sierra realized this wasn't a discovery anymore. It was a hunt, and she wasn't the predator, she was the proof. Sierra didn't sleep that night. She drove deep into the forest, using a forgotten service road that only she remembered from old repair jobs. The second marked site led her to a concrete bunker carved into a hillside. The metal door hung open. Inside, filing cabinets, charts, old photos. Each folder filled with names, numbers, and dates with no return records. At the far end of the room, a photograph stopped her cold. The same cabin she had found, with a man in a ranger's uniform standing beside it. His name was blacked out. Underneath, in red ink, were 3 words, "Do not interact." Sierra's pulse pounded in her ears. They'd known someone would find it one day, and they'd planned for it. She grabbed everything she could and ran. This was no abandoned project. It was still alive. The final red circle led her miles deeper into the forest, to what looked like an old chapel half swallowed by moss. The stained glass still caught the fading sun, painting the forest floor in bleeding colors. Inside, the pews were gone, replaced by metal tables, old monitors, and crates labeled only by numbers. She opened one. Photographs spilled out. Men, women, children, all marked, all numbered, some terrified, others lifeless. Sierra's stomach twisted. Then she heard the faint hum of machinery. She followed it down a narrow corridor to a small room and found him, an old man slumped in a chair, barely breathing. "You're not one of them," he rasped. His name was Dr. Colin Harrow, the author of the diaries. "Tell them what they've done," he whispered. "Under the floor." She lifted the boards, hidden files, tapes, IDs, proof. Harrow's eyes dimmed, but his voice was clear. "I used to be a ranger." When the federal trucks arrived before dawn, Sierra stood outside that ruined chapel with the tin box in her hands. Inside it, truth. Files, tapes, names, decades of silence finally broken. The agents moved fast, uncovering graves beneath the chapel floor, crates filled with records no one was supposed to see. One of them approached her. "You just opened a case that's been buried for 20 years. She didn't smile. She just said, "Someone had to." Weeks later, back in her garage, Sierra sat beside her tools, the smell of oil and iron wrapping around her like an old memory. She opened the original diary one last time. On the final page, a message she hadn't noticed before: "You were never alone." She smiled softly. Maybe she was. Maybe some truths wait for the right person to find them. And Sierra Langley, the mechanic who walked into the woods to escape her life, had become the woman who exposed the darkness behind it. Headphone, if you believe the truth should never stay buried, hit that subscribe button. Because what Sierra found out there was only the beginning.